Yes, we are live and in living colors. It is time for another episode of the Entrepreneurial You podcast, and I am so glad that you chose to join us today. One, for the live recording on social media, streaming on social media on Facebook, in the Facebook group, the Entrepreneurial You, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. And of course, for those who are listening to this podcast, then thank you and welcome back if you've been joining me on the lives, and a very warm welcome as well to you if you have been just listening to the podcast. That's fine. If you're joining me for the very first time, then it is my pleasure, a very distinguished and pleasure of mine to have you visiting with me today. You know, you could have been otherwise minded, and for that, I'm grateful. I don't take it for granted. So, thank you so much. So, last week, you would recall, we had a lovely conversation with Mike Sullivan, and Mike, being the president and CEO of Loomis, which is the country's largest, that is the US, leading challenger brand advertising agency. He just gave some amazing insights into how we can develop cultures around challenger brands, the fact that they're smaller, they're more nimble, and can make changes quicker, and just, the inspiring story that they can provide to persons, their customers, their well wishers who are cheering them on. Now, this week, it is another pleasure of mine as I'm going to be talking once again. We dealt with it recently, but we're going to take another angle and just look at some tips for real estate, beginners. And so we're talking with a real estate entrepreneur, and he's been selling, leading, and investing for a number of years. But of course, I got to say thanks. Gratitude is a must. I got to say thanks to my sponsor who has been with me from the very get go of this podcast, 2017. Since then, they've been on board with me. So, to the stock exchange, thank you so much for supporting what we do. The stock exchange has been voted by Bloomberg for many years the best performing stock market globally, which is a big thing. Jamaica, we little about with Talawa, right? So here's a word from our sponsor, and then we'll get the show on the road. Welcome back. It is episode 308, go figure, of the Entrepreneurial You podcast. And today I'm speaking with Luke Andrews. Yes, Luke is a real estate entrepreneur who sells, leads, and invests. He is a best selling author who has purchased 40 rental properties before turning 40. Yeah, some persons don't even sell one or purchase one or four, or even anything of that number. So we're going to be saying congratulations to Luke. And he has been, he has this amazing and strong passion for trying to save lives through real estate. Yes, and we're going to hear from Luke how he's doing that, how he's saving lives through real estate. Welcome, Luke.
I'm so happy to be here, Hanika. Thank you.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to have you. And I was giving you a little introduction into the Jamaican language before you came on air live, and may ask you what go on. So, which is essentially what's happening. So now, you based in Kentucky and all of this lovely jazz. I want to hear from you. What, besides what go on, do you know about the Jamaican culture?
Whew. Very, very little. Actually, obviously beautiful, beautiful beaches, and just this amazing energy from the people that I have met from Jamaica. I've never actually
Mm.
been to the island myself. I've been to several in the area, but I've never actually been to Jamaica. But I have met several people from the island, and just the energy and the love that they bring. It's infectious. It's contagious. It's such an amazing culture.
Yeah, the energy and the love. Vibes for days, we bring the vibes. All right, Luke, today we're talking real estate, and we want to get some tips, for beginners. Recently, as I got more conscious and aware of the different types of investments and exploring my own options, real estate has been one of them big on the agenda for me. So I just, see it only natural to take that to my audience as well. And as such, we are really exploring more and more the topic of real estate as entrepreneurs contemplate viable options to pursue. So first and foremost, Luke, how did you get involved in real estate?
Well, so I'm involved in real estate in a couple of different facets. So I am a real estate agent, so I do help people buy and sell homes.
Hmm.
But I also lead a team of over 20 agents. And then I am a real estate investor myself, as you kind of mentioned through your introduction. Um, from just getting into the real estate business itself, it started about 7 or 8 years ago. And my wife, who was a real estate agent, she was, I was in a corporate 9 to 5, and had a great job with a great salary and benefits. And I was in a downtown office commuting back and forth to the suburbs. And she said, "Hey, if you had your license, you could just stop and show houses while you're commuting home each night, and she wouldn't have to go out during rush hour." And so it started as kind of a joke, but it was something that I had an interest in. I had an interest to get started in real estate investing and thought that might be helpful. And so I went out, got my license, and fell in love instantly with the process and with, you know, being an entrepreneur and running my own business. And we started making a plan of, how can I do this full time? And so we made a 24-month plan that says, how am I going to transition from this great corporate job that I have that's not fulfilling, but it's definitely paying the bills, to being an entrepreneur and being full-time real estate. So we set that plan up for 24 months and actually were able to accomplish it in 10. And then really it took off. It took off from there, and it's just grown and grown and grown.
Wow, that is beautiful, commendable. Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, and good to, power to your wife for making that suggestion and you taking it on and, running with it.
She is amazing. Without her, I wouldn't be where I am today. So
Yeah, yeah. Congrats to her. Give her my regards as well. You know, real estate is actually something I thought about recently, that I need to get my license, but I just think about, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to do some more studies and da, da, da. And I just recent what I did prior to that desire to go into, getting a brokerage license. Uh, I said to myself, I'm going to go into insurance, which I did the exams, passed with flying colors and everything. And I thought I wanted to do that, but I realized starting it, I realized that it's not for me at all. Like, just asking some probing questions of people, just prying. Like, I love to talk to people, but I want them to, if they so feel led, to volunteer information. But with insurance, you just really got to probe and ask some questions that I don't really feel comfortable asking. So I decided, what, this is not for me. But anyway, I digress. Let's get back on track. All right. So before we get in some tips, because I really want to get some tips and stuff, I'd love to hear some things, Luke, that that are specific to the real estate industry. If there's anything that you can look at and say, you know what, it's not like investing in land. It's not like investing in, in homes and stuff. Well, of course that's part of it, but it's not that kind of a stock investment, or it's not kind of a entrepreneurial venture. What distinguishes the real estate industry from other entrepreneurial ventures that may be similar?
well, and let me make sure that I'm understanding your question correctly. Are you looking at this from the entrepreneurial side of
Yes, the
becoming a real
entrepreneurial
estate
side for
agent,
sure. The
or
entrepreneurial side.
the real estate investing side of it?
The entrepreneurial side.
Sure.
Hmm.
So there's pros and cons on the real estate side. One that actually kind of straddles that line of pro and con is there's a very low barrier to entry to get into our business.
Hmm.
It's in the United States, it's different from state to state.
Hmm.
But for the most part, states follow the same procedures, and it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 hours of classroom work. And that could be online class, it could be in-person class, it could be a hybrid of the two. It's a matter of passing a test and then just going and finding a brokerage to put your license.
Hmm.
Um, and cost is relatively low. I mean, I had an agent who got licensed recently. They did their courses completely online. They were up and running for under $1,000. So there aren't really many businesses that have an unlimited income potential that you could really get started and legitimately get up and running for under $1,000. So it's a great opportunity for people who want to take advantage of it. But at the same time, it also attracts a lot of people because it's not that difficult to get into. It attracts a lot of people who, as I say, they want to play realtor on Instagram. They don't want to actually do the work. They don't want to actually build the relationships. They don't want to do the things that need to get done. But they do, they see the reality shows, they see the $1 million listing and shows like that. And they say, this is what I want to do. And not realizing that the actual business works very, very differently. And so, I try to help people understand that, because the number one question that I ask people when I'm interviewing a new agent is, why do you want to get into this business? And 95% of the time they'll tell me, I'm looking to where I can make, quote, good money and have flexible hours. And I say, that's fantastic. The options are there, but the flexibility isn't what it's portrayed to be. And it's a kind of business that you can either always be working or you can always be not working. So you have to have that discipline to do the work when you need to do it. But I also have to explain that flexible hours don't mean optional hours. And that's really true for any entrepreneurial venture that I found, is that people think that there's all this flexibility in owning your own business because you're, quote, the boss. However, usually being the boss in these small businesses mean wearing 15 different hats and doing things constantly. You're probably working significantly more for a lot smaller reward, especially in the beginning. So you really have to love that process. You have to love what you're doing, because flexible hours don't mean optional hours.
That is such a poignant point right there. Flexible hours don't mean optional hours. You have to put in the hours if you choose to put them in the midnight hour or wherever, but they have to be put in. And that's the rude awakening that I got to when I decided that I am going to become an entrepreneur because I want to set my time. I want freedom. I want flexibility. Well, what, just about over 13 or so years in, I'm realizing, nah, that's not the case. That's not the case. All right, Luke, let's get back on track and share some tips. I know you're coming at this from many angles, but those who are interested in one, spend a little time, talk about those who want to invest in real estate, but also those who want to sell, spend some time sharing some tips on those.
Sure. So we'll start with the people that want to actually be agents. My number one tip is take your time in figuring out which office that you want to go work for. You are going to have many offers and many opportunities just from getting your license. There are companies that will buy lists of people taking the test, just trying to recruit. And really, if you have a pulse and a license, they'll let you come in. And you can be attracted by these large splits. And basically what I mean are commission splits. So if you make a commission, typically a portion will go to your office or to your team, and a portion goes to you. Some of these offices are offering, 90% to stay to you, which is great. And that's very flashy in the beginning. So if you're looking at two offices and saying, okay, well, this one's going to let me keep 90% of the income I bring in, and this one over here is going to let me keep 50 or 60%. The 90 is automatically where your eye gets drawn. But I think it's a bit of a short-sighted view where people need to take a moment and really sit down and look at what services are being provided for that additional split. And so I always tell new agents, whether you go with us or whether you go with somebody else, focus on value, not on split, especially in the beginning, because you're in a spot where you're going to need to learn how to do this business. The test teaches you very little of how the business actually works. You learn a lot of things that aren't necessarily applicable anymore, like how to measure a property in something called meets and bounds. I've been licensed for 8 years and I've never had to measure anything in meets and bounds. But that was a focus of 3 questions out of 100 on my test. So you need to find a spot where you're going to have a good mentor, where there's going to be a good culture that you can fit into, a place where you feel comfortable asking questions. Um, excuse me. And especially being brand new, find a place that's going to provide you some leads and who's going to provide you high quality leads. Ask to go sit in on a meeting, one of their team meetings. Um, any office that doesn't have anything to hide and is genuinely collaborative and genuinely helpful, they're not going to have any issue at all with you coming in and sitting in one of their meetings. That way you get an opportunity to see not just what they tell you on the front side. Everybody's on their best behavior in a job interview, from the person who's asking for the job to the person who's giving the job. Everybody's on their best behavior, but actually go in and see what the culture feels like when you're in there. So again, focusing on value and not on split. And then understanding too, that it is going to be a grind for the first year or two. My big mistake that I made when I came into this business, I had my MBA. I had years and years of a high level corporate job. I had a great sphere of influence. I felt like I had a good knowledge base. I had a good professional presence. And my arrogance, I just assumed that the second that I hung my shingle, that people were going to be beating down my door, getting me to help them buy and sell their homes. And it's just not the case. And so I didn't do the things that I needed to do. I didn't put in that initial work that I needed to put in. I thought just because of who I was and what I had accomplished in another career, which is, looking back now, it's the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life, but the dumbest thing I've ever thought. It was so just selfish and arrogant. But I just assumed that people would just come to me. And then all of a sudden you start seeing your friends and family on social media. And it's like they're buying and selling their houses. And you're looking, you're like,
what happened to you?
Right. And I realized it's not their fault. It's my fault. I didn't go to them and talk to them. Yeah. And so I've helped new agents come up with this script of this vulnerability that my wife used when she first got in the business. She found her top kind of 3 to 5 people in her life, close friends and family, that she knew she could get vulnerable with. She took them all out individually to either lunch or coffee. And she just said, hey, look, I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to do what it takes. But in order for me to be successful, I'm going to need people like you in my corner, referring me and talking about me and my services to others. She got very, very vulnerable, which is something that I didn't do in the beginning. That was a mistake that I made. And she was very, very successful because of that, because she laid that foundation on the front side. You kind of have to push your ego to the side when you come into this business, because otherwise it will kick you in the teeth very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like, a lot of entrepreneurs suffer from this, don't like to ask for help. We are so independent, and we don't want to ask for help because it makes us feel weak. It makes us look like we don't know what we're doing. But the truth is, no man is an island. No man stands alone. We all need each other, to get going.
You are 100% correct. We absolutely need each other. And it's one of those that I've always thought, oh, I don't need help. I do the helping. I don't need help from anybody else. I help other people.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's this fear of feeling weak. And I think we need to normalize sharing our weaknesses with each other and letting people know that, hey, it's okay. I don't know everything. And it's okay that I don't know everything. I don't expect that from others. Why would others expect that from me?
Mm-hmm. And it's also about a fear, I believe, a fear of being rejected. Like, and 99% of the time when you go to persons, they're not going to reject you. If they really can't help based on what you're asking, then they'll perhaps, recommend you to somebody else, but nobody's going to flat out reject you, unless that person's mean and unkind and just naturally mean-spirited and stuff. But generally people are willing to help. Like, and we know this theoretically, that people are willing to help us with whatever we want, and there are ways to get people to help us. When we help people get what they want, they help us get what we want,
Mhm.
So there are ways around it. So thank you for sharing that. But let's look at it from the standpoint too of an investor
Sure.
getting into real estate.
So for me, and I also had a very interesting way that I came into real estate investing.
Mm-hmm.
I told you I was in that corporate job, and I had someone in my office who was a colleague, and we just started talking about how interesting real estate investing would be. And we'd have lunch together, we'd take walks together, we would do all of these things, and we just kept talking about real estate investing, and we thought, let's partner up here. So first and foremost, I tell people, don't be afraid to take a partner.
Mm.
Don't take a partner solely for financial reasons, but also don't shy away from a partner solely for financial reasons. Just because you're cutting your profits by 50%, you're also cutting your risk by 50%. You're also bringing in a different skill set. You're bringing in somebody to bounce ideas off of, somebody who will bring you back down to earth when you've got these pie in the sky crazy ideas that you so I say I don't look for my twin in business partner. I tell people to
Mm-hmm.
look for your mirror. Find your
Mm-hmm.
opposite. Areas where you're strong, you want them to be weak, and vice versa. If areas where they're weak, you want to be strong. You want someone who can counteract your strengths so that you all can cover more ground. Like we just talked about, you're not going to be fantastic at everything, so you got to
Mm-hmm.
find a partner. Um, but with this partner that I had, our plan was there was an area of town that we knew was gentrifying. It was up and coming, and you could still find an old fixer-upper in there, a small place for around $20,000 that would have good cash. It was going to need some work, and so our plan was pay cash for this $20,000 property. We would do the work ourselves to fix it up. We turn it into a rental, and then we would gradually just start building from there. And so we started looking and we started looking, and just by chance, he was having dinner with his girlfriend's parents. And they had a friend over, and they were like, "Oh, hey, what do you do?" And he said, I work in strategic marketing and data analytics.
Mm-hmm.
But my real passion is real estate investing. And we're trying to buy our first property. And they said, well, interestingly enough, we own a bunch of rental properties, and we are looking to cash out and retire and move out of state. So we went from trying to buy one $20,000 property to a package of 13 fall into our lap. And they weren't willing to sell them off piece by piece. So we had to buy all 13. He brings it to me. I analyze the deal, and it is a great deal. But there is no way, shape, or form that we can afford to buy these 13 properties. We can't even afford the down payment that it would take to get these 13 properties. But instead of just saying, hey, it looks like a great deal, but it's not the right time, we started thinking outside the box. And so we found someone that we knew that had bought a bunch of properties in the past. And we
Mm-hmm.
said, hey, let's sit down, just tell us what you did. We were essentially just trying to pick their brain a little bit, just to figure out what did they do and to see if they had any ideas for us. And he looked at the deal. He thought it was great. And he said, well, hey, why don't I partner with you as well? You will be 50%. He'll be 50%. That's great. The problem that we ran into there is we still didn't have enough for
For the
50% of the
50%.
down. Correct. So we still got 50% of the 20%. So again, now this guy could have gone off and he could have done the deal completely on his own. He had plenty of cash, and but he said, hey, he was like, if you guys can come up with the money, he was like, I'll keep you in the deal. He said, otherwise he's going to take it himself. And so thinking outside the box, I said, okay, we could come up with about half of what we need. We were going to put these properties into a property management company anyway that was going to charge us 10%. We said, hey, we'll put in everything that we've got right now. We'll still be 50% owners, and we will agree to manage these properties at no cost on a schedule. So basically, whatever rent we collect each month, we'll take 10% of that, and it will go towards essentially working off our debt of him bringing the extra money to closing. So we were 50-50 partners from the beginning, but we only had to bring a portion of the down payment. So instead of check equity, we utilized sweat equity. And so that did a couple of things for us. One, it got us into the game. But two, we learned so much managing those properties, things that we never would have learned turning it over to a property manager. We're there in the trenches. It grew my appreciation for what property managers do. It changed my opinion of how to value potential rental properties. And it gave us so much, just this intangible value. But that's really what springboarded our portfolio, was the fact that we started with these, we learned so much, and we were able to get in with less cash than we needed to. And eventually we refinanced those properties because we added enough value with the work that we were doing as managers and increasing the rents, that we were able to refinance that, pull all of our cash back out. So none of us had actually any hard cash invested, and we still had equity, and it was still cash flowing because we increased the value so much. And then that, again, just springboarded what we were doing. But it took a lot of running into roadblocks, and instead of giving up, trying to think outside the box and come up with creative solutions. And I think it's that way in all entrepreneurial ventures. It's just so happened that in real estate investing, you got to get a little creative sometimes.
Yeah, and that was very creative. So when I talked about in the intro, you purchased 40 rental properties by the time you were 40, before you were 40. So you would have essentially gained over 25% of that 40 just by one deal.
Yes. Yeah.
Just by
was.
one deal.
And without that one deal, I
Mm-hmm.
might have 3 to 5 right now. I'm 40
Wow.
years old right now. So we bought our 40th. I turned 40 September of last year, and we bought our 40th we closed in April or May of that year. So, I mean, I just squeaked in under the wire of the 40 under 40.
Well, 40, yeah, that's pretty cool. No,
But
talk to
without
us
that first deal,
Mhm.
I'd only have 3 or
Yeah.
5, because I learned so much, and it
It, it, it,
catapulted my
te-
path.
it taught you quickly, so the learning curve wasn't as steep because you
Mhm.
were in from the get-go with that many, managing the properties and not having to turn them over to a property manager. So you saved, you gained financially, but you also gained much more than that. You gained the experience and the know-how to move on to your next. Now, talk to me a little bit. I mean, we're almost out of time, but I want you to talk to me a little bit, Luke, about the importance of leveraging your first. So, I mean, in business generally, if you're doing a product or a service, then that first customer that you have and how you leverage, how you build on that. So, talk to us a little bit in to be successful, how you leverage your first win.
Sure. So I leveraged it in a couple of different ways. One, I leveraged it financially. We were able to take that deal, and we were able to add some hard value by doing some intangible things, like going through and increasing the rents and doing just little minor fixes through there. So we were able to leverage that way by gaining some value. But I also leveraged it. It put me in a legitimate conversation. So as I'm going out and I'm meeting with new property managers, with new lenders, with new insurance agents, with new trades like plumbers and electricians and things like that, it wasn't just me coming in and saying, "Oh, hey, I've got one property and I want you to take me seriously."
Yeah, I've got 13. Hello.
I've got 13 right over
Hello.
here. I'm a legitimate player in the space. Now,
Yeah.
they didn't know that I didn't know anything, and that they all kind of fell into my
And
lap.
they didn't need to because you're learning along the way.
But it was how I leveraged the opportunity and what was in front of me, that was, again, able to springboard us into success later on.
And so how do you, because you're in real estate right now, Luke, in many, wearing many hats. How do you make sure, as part of the ecosystem that you're in different areas, how do you make sure that you stay focused and you're not overextending yourself?
Sure. So I kind of focus on being a real estate investor first, and that kind of trickles down into everything else that I'm doing. And I say that because, one, being a real estate investor helps provide me additional cash flow, which helps out my core business of buying and selling and being a real estate leader. But by me being an investor, I'm able to show my agents and teach my agents as well as work with other investors, helping them find deals, helping them buy and sell. But I'm teaching my other agents. And what I tell them right now, the market is shifting. And because the market is shifted, it is a good time for investors at the moment. Investors have been sitting on the sidelines the last couple of years, but now they are chomping at the bit that they're seeing prices start to come down and normalize a little bit. Excuse me. And so what I've told my agents, I said, if you focus on buying a rental property this year, it will help you sell 3 to 4 more houses to your clients throughout the year. And the way that they do that is if they're focused on buying a property for themselves, they are out looking on a daily basis. And when they're out there looking for those potential deals in those properties, they're going to come across several that are good opportunities and good deals, but they don't quite meet their criteria that they've set out. Maybe it's the property's 125,000 and they cap at 115. Now it's still a good deal and still cash flows at 125. They just can only afford up to 115. So then that gives them an opportunity to go out and present to another investor to say, hey, I've got this great deal. I can't afford it on my own, but it's something that you may potentially want. So by me focusing on my own investment business, it is leading by example. It's showing them exactly what they need to be doing. It's also helping me uncover deals for my potential clients. And it is helping my agents grow their sales business and then also their own personal portfolios. So if I focus on that side of it, it's kind of that rising tide lifts all boats. And so that one side of my business is raising up all of the others.
Yeah. I had, as you said, that the imagery of the Panama Canal comes to mind. Have you ever been to see the canal?
I have not been to see the canal. I've been very, very close to Panama, but I've never actually been in Panama.
You should go. That's one of the greatest wonders of the world, just to see how, when the boat coming, the containers coming in, the ship coming in, and it's causing the gates to open. I cannot explain how phenomenal it is. You just need to go and have a look.
My dad used to tell me that he had been through it several times, and he just talked about what a neat experience it was.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty cool. I think I need to go back and see it. All right. We have pretty much come to the end of our conversation, Luke, and I want you to close off, leaving some tips. And we take it from the investment side of things this time. Leave some tips for persons who are interested. Well, success. You've already given tips, sorry, but just your final thoughts as it relates to success in investing, real estate investing.
Sure. Seek the advice of people that have done it before you. Most good investors are willing to share their pitfalls with you. They're willing to share the things that they've done because it's something that they're passionate about and interested in. And the majority of good investors know that there aren't enough good investors out there. My business partner and I, we have very similar goals, visions, and values. And, our goal, vision, and value is really just to provide quality and affordable housing for as many people as we can. And so we understand that there aren't enough good property owners out there willing to do that. And so we're just trying to share the message and help people understand that it's not as easy as it looks. It's not all completely passive income like they'll tell you on Instagram, that it's actually very active income. It's not just, quote unquote, mailbox money. There are a lot of phone calls. There is a lot of work that goes along with it, even when you have a property manager in place. So don't kind of fall into that trap. It goes back to the flexible hours or optional hours. But really just asking a lot of questions and not being afraid to think outside the box. Yeah. There's so many different opportunities and options out there. I actually wrote a book recently because it was something that I was very passionate about, and I was going to put it on Amazon and use it as an additional revenue stream. But somebody said, hey, if you're genuinely passionate about this, why don't you just give it away? And I said, well, you're right. I need to put my money where my mouth is. And so I set it up. Anybody can go download it. It's an ebook only. If they go to 10investormistakes.com, and that's the number 10, so 10investormistakes.com, you can download that book 100% for free. It talks about my journey in real estate investing, and then it also talks about the mistakes that I've made and what I see a lot of new investors make. So try to help you not make those same mistakes that I did. 10investormistakes.com. Or you can always, if somebody has a very specific question, find me on Instagram, Luke Andrews RE. So for Luke Andrews Real Estate, or you can just email me, luke@lukeandrews.us. I answer all my own emails. My assistant doesn't do that. I am happy to talk real estate with anybody that wants to.
And that's 10investormistakes.com. That's 10mistakes, investormistakes.com.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Luke Andrews. It has been a pleasure. You've been insightful and just sharing your experience, your tips, your knowledge with us. I appreciate that a whole lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hanika. It's been a ton of fun.
Yeah. And I think before I go, when I think about what you've been saying, what comes to mind is the glitz and glam of shows like Selling Sunset. I don't know if that's one of the ones that you watch.
It is. I have seen it.
Yeah, yeah, Netflix series there, Selling Sunset. I love it. I love. I don't particularly like the drama that comes with it. Too much drama, but the fashion and the houses, the complex, the apartments, just superb. So yeah, it's one of my favorite Netflix series. All right, so 10 investor mistakes. Investor is spelled INVESTOR, not
That's right.
ER. TOR. It's TOR, my friend. And for those who are tuning in via the Facebook group, the Entrepreneurial You have to. I think you have to give StreamYard access or the Facebook access so that your name can show, because as it is now, it just says Facebook user. But I think you have to give some access um, to the app so that your name can show and I can know who it is that's saying hello. When I do it on my profile, of course the name comes up, but I really want to build a group, so I've decided to have these conversations in the Facebook group. So it's 10 investor mistakes, and investor is INVESTOR, mistakes. Okay, not an E but an O. All right. Thank you again, Luke Andrews. It's been my absolute pleasure. And from you, I have my takeaway is take your time to determine which office you want to work for. So once you've done your license, you've gotten your license, there's going to be a ton of companies trying to court you to work for them. But just take your time to do your due diligence and assess whom do you want to work for. As you're into the business, focus on the value that you are bringing and not necessarily the split that you will get, the commission split, but just think about the value you're giving and getting rather than the commission split at the get-go. And don't be afraid. I love this one. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable with your network. Reach out to them. Say what it is that you are trying to do and let them know. Let them help you. They want to help you. They want to be able to say, look back and say, I was able to help her with that, and I'm happy. Or I was able to help him with that. So yeah. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable, and that goes for just about every area of your life. Vulnerability. The greatest leaders are the ones that are willing and have been vulnerable with others, with those they're leading, with those that they want to influence within their sphere of influence. So vulnerability is key, is one of the keys to success. Many persons are prideful, and so they don't go to that tool, they don't use that tool, but it's a resource that you have within you to be vulnerable, so use it. All right. I want you to connect with me for all things podcasting or my coaching. I'm a coach, I'm a speaker, I'm an author. Connect with me if you want me to speak at your event, your upcoming events. If you want to have me coach you one-on-one or through my group mastermind or group mentorship or group coaching, I do all of those. My topic, of course, is leadership and just getting unstuck, getting to the next level. So my website is henikawatkisporter.com, email henikawatkisporter@gmail.com, and of course on social media, Henika Watkis-Porter. And one final thing before I go, I know I have a lot of calls to action, but one final thing is I ask that you follow this podcast on whichever podcast app is your favorite. So whether it's Google, Stitcher, Apple, Spotify, whatever, just go there, look for the podcast app, look for Henico, the Entrepreneurial You within that app, subscribe and listen and give your feedback. And finally, I have to end with according to the scriptures. I will give thanks to you, Lord, with all my heart. I will tell of your wonderful deeds. Psalm 9, verse 1. Do take care. Have a really great rest of the day. And before I go, I would love to Facebook user telling me good morning and all of that. Put your name in so I can know who it is because I have no idea. Again, Facebook isn't showing your name when you're going from the group. So if you're still there, just put your name so I can give you your shout out. And okay, I'm not seeing it, so I'm going to end right here. Take care. Until next time.